Hello and welcome back to Copper Star Precision, the channel dedicated to getting you more points in your competitive shooting matches. We're still going over the NRL22 July Course of Fire. If you haven't seen the other videos, I'll put a link to a playlist up here and just go check out the other videos. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel for all the updates. If you want to get more points in your matches, I hope these videos help. Let me know in the comments if they do or not. So the fifth and final stage of the NRL Course of Fire is going to be Battle at Bunker Hill. It's a 120-second part-time course with 10 rounds. We've got 5 different targets, and if you thought the last round was complicated with the ladder and the chair and support side and this and that, this is equally as complicated. I think this one and the last one in the last video that I made are the 2 most complicated stages, and this is what makes or breaks the match. So don't feel bad if you don't do well in these stages or if you time out or anything like that. These are definitely challenging. So, if you're new to the channel, what I always like to do is I always like to go in here and I write down the target sizes. Just gives me an idea of how much leeway, and this is actually going to become absolutely immensely important for the holdovers that we're going to do once we talk about the course description. So, target sizes all hover around 0.9 mils, and this last target is actually the largest target of the match. So every target that you've shot up until this point is smaller than that. So that's why this has been a very challenging course of fire. But if we talk strategy, we're going to get through this. So what we're going to do is we are going to look at the course description. And I have a funky little diagram here, which I hope will make sense in a moment, so stay with me. This is a bonus stage, so it does matter for the time, but I wouldn't worry about that. Like I said, always make your hits. That's, one hit of 10 points is worth more than you could ever make when it comes to bonus time. So on the start signal, the shooter will engage the targets from far to near, and then from near to far with 1 shot at each, hit or miss, move on from any tank trap tip. So 1 tip, after the 5th shot, move to a different tip, engage. So far to near, move, near to far. Special note, this is a no dial stage. So for those of you who are used to dialing for every distance, it's not going to happen. Elevation and windage may not be touched after the time starts. Only parallax may be adjusted during the stage. So we're going to have to talk strategy here. There's a lot of different strategies. It's going to depend on your rifle. It's going to depend on what kind of ballistics you have and the sort of the dope you have for your rifle. I'm going to give you one suggestion of how I intend on doing it, and hopefully it gives you some ideas about how you might do it. Now, obviously, you can just dial for one of the targets, namely the first target. So you might be dialing, over here for me, it'd be 1.8 at the far target, and then holding under. You could dial at the first target and hold over, but then you have to remember all these numbers. So what I like to do is I like to actually use those target sizes that I had up above as a way to compensate. So instead of necessarily, it'll be a combination of holdovers, or you can think of it as centering your crosshairs on different parts of the target. So what do I mean by this? Well, let's give an example here. This would be kind of what my dope card would look like for this stage. So I'm going to dial 0.7, which for me is this middle target here. If you see that, the 73-yard target, that's my elevation is 0.7. So and I have 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 because I'm going from far to near. So I labeled them 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Those are the targets, and I know I'm going to have to go back up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So starting at target 5, to get from 0.7 to 1.8 is 1.1 mils. That's close enough to 1 because the target size itself is like 0.9 mils. So 0.1 mil is not going to make a huge difference in the grand scheme of things. So I'm going to go from dialed for 7, I'm going to hold a full mil because I know I have a hash mark in my scope for 1 mil holdover. I'm going to engage that target. Then I'm going to go from this 0.7 to target 4, which for me is 1.1, so it's 0.4 away. Now I could use the 1/2 hash mark in my scope, but the fact that the target is about 0.9 means that half the target is about 0.45 mils. That's very close to the 0.4 difference. So I can hold my crosshairs at the top of the target. So instead of trying to find the hash mark, everyone's used to seeing the center of the crosshairs. So what we're going to do is we're going to hold, for me, I'm gonna hold the top of the target, or just underneath the tip of the target, and engage the target. And because the tip of the target, 0.7 to 1.1 is 0.4, by holding the top of the target, the bullet should land somewhere in the middle of the target. 3 is easy. I've dialed for that, holding center. 2 is similar because it's 0.4 under, so I'm going to hold the bottom of the target. And then the last one is 0.7 under. The target really isn't a good size, but I do have a hash mark above my crosshairs at minus 0.5, so I'm probably going to go with that. That's the one oddball here. That's a little, just have to be mindful, but it is a relatively generous target, so even if I hold under 0.5 when I should be holding under 0.7, I still have some leeway because the target is big enough that it shouldn't make a huge difference. The key thing is going to be making sure everything is stable. But I'm going to approach the stage this way. I'm going to dial for the middle target, use this top, center, and bottom strategy so that I'm not trying to fumble looking through my scope. You know, am I at the 1 or the half mil hash mark? You know I can just, for at least the middle 3 targets, I can use the center crosshairs and just aim top, center, bottom. So what does this look like in practice? Let's go to the range and find out.
All right, so here we are at the practice range. We got our tank trap set up. This is not so much about building positions on a tank trap. I think most people encounter this obstacle at every match. So you should have your own strategy. Mine is usually simply just place a bag on top, rifle follows at a balance point. Rifle's nice and balanced there, naturally balanced. Kind of locking the legs. You don't want to be bouncing up and down with your knees. Lock the legs, lean into the rifle, engage targets. So nice and stable there. One thing I won't mention is at the start of the stage, make sure that you kind of have the part that's going to go over the tip spread apart like this, maybe between like 2 fingers here. So it's nice and easy to just to get that laying flat as soon as possible. Nice big surface area. Drop the rifle down. Easy peasy. So it's not so much about building positions on a tank trap. I'm going to make a whole video on the tank trap overall. The key to this stage is the fact that it's a no dial stage. So when we talked about no dialing in the strategy session, I was going to dial my scope to 0.7, and then basically for the far targets, I'm holding over. For the middle target, I'm dialed exactly center, and for the near targets, I'm holding under. That may or may not work for you. You may want to dial 0, hold over on every single target, but you have to know the limitations of your scope, where you have hash marks. But there's also a really cool thing in Strelok Pro, which is one of the ballistics calculators that I use, where you can actually set the targets, set the sizes, and you can dial what your elevation is, and then it will show you what that size target will look like in your scope. So I'm going to put a couple screenshots up here. So for me, you're going to have to figure out what works for you, whether you're going to dial for the first, second, third, fourth, or fifth target, and if you're going to hold over or under accordingly. But take some time to play around with options like this if your ballistic calculator has it. So if I hold, if I dial 0.7 and I'm aiming at the far target, this is what my sight picture should look like and where I have to hold to make a hit. So I'm probably going to be holding right around that 1 mil hash mark, which is good because I only have half mil hash marks on my scope. So I don't want to be doing like 0.3, anything like that, if I can help it. If I go to the second target, I'm going to be basically holding, I should be holding 0.4 over, but as I discussed in the target sizes video, I can just use my center crosshair and aim towards the top of the target. And if you don't believe me, look at the screenshot. If I'm looking, instead of holding 0.4 or trying to get the 0.5 hash mark right in the middle of the target, it's actually easier to aim at sort of an apex of the top of the target. So I'm going to be aiming my center crosshairs at the top of the target to engage that target. The third target is just going to be simply straight up because I'm already dialed for it. The fourth target, the second closest to us, I'm actually be holding the bottom of the target for the opposite reason of the fourth target. And that's what this looks like here in the scope. And then the first target, the math kind of didn't work out. This is the one weird one. I'd have to hold under 0.7. And in order to do that, I don't have hash marks in between the 0.5 and 1.0. So what I'm actually gonna do, instead of trying to guess where 0.7 is, I'm just gonna try and put those two hash marks, because the middle of that would be 0.75, right? That's very close to 0.7. So I'm gonna take those two hash marks and kind of bracket the entire target. So my half mil hash mark and my 1 mil hash mark are gonna be the guides for bracketing that. And I have to hold under. So it's gonna be the half and the 1 mil that are above my crosshairs. I'm gonna bracket that, and that should put me right on target. So hopefully that gave you an idea of how you can, tackle this stage, and even use ballistic calculators to help you sort of visualize what those targets might look like ahead of time. I think that's super important, getting that sight picture even before you get down on your own scope. So I highly recommend things like Streetlock Pro for that ability, because they have all the types of scopes, and you can just put in your target distances and basically see what it's going to look like if you dial at different dial different elevations, what that target might look like. So for me, again, my dope card is going to look something like this, where it's going to be 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's going to be a hold of 1 over, top of the target, center of the target, bottom of the target, and then in between, minus 0.75, in between that half mil and 1 mil hash mark, bracketing the target. And that should get me to where I need to go. Remember, you can't dial on this stage. So, just to prevent a procedural error, if you have locking turrets, I would take this, I would dial it to 0.7, I would lock it down so you're not tempted to change that. Same with the windage. The only thing you can change is parallax, which I recommend you do. And because you're going far to near, just change parallax all the way down, and then on the way back up, you're already set at the first target, and then just change parallax all the way up. You'll have plenty of time. Just make good holds, and whatever dope and elevation that you calculate, find a strategy that works for you. And don't be afraid, instead of trying to figure out exactly what hash mark to hold, 0.6 over, 0.3 under, think about if you can use the target sizes just to aim at different parts of the target, like the bottom of the target or the top of the target. So I hope that helps get you more points. That's what I'm gonna be doing during the match. And yeah, like, comment, subscribe on this video. Lots more videos coming soon. I'm gonna talk about how to calculate those target sizes in future videos. I'm also gonna talk about all the gear I use in NRL22, give you guys an idea of things that you might be interested in, my opinions on it. And my goal for this channel, I'm hoping to get a trigger cam here so I can take you along with me at matches, so I can put my money where my mouth is and see if my strategies, tips, and tricks actually work in the field. So stay tuned. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel with notifications enabled, and I'll see you next time.